Hello everyone. Good afternoon once again. I'm Rakshita from Mismo Systems. I welcome you all to the webinar. Thank you for joining us and taking out time for the webinar today. So in today's session, we will be covering a webinar on the topic Unlock the Power of AI with Microsoft Copilot Studio, building your first custom AI Copilot. So before moving forward, some instructions for the participants. We are turning off mic and camera to maintain the decorum, but chat is always open for you. So you can put on your queries in the chat box. We will answer them. Let's start the webinar. So today we are going to explore one of the most innovative advancement in AI tool, that is Microsoft Copilot Studio. AI Copilot have transformed how we approach daily tasks, from boosting productivity to enhancing decision making across the enterprise. So in this session, we will discuss how Copilot Studio helps organizations automate tasks, improve productivity, and enhance efficiency.
Parvinder, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you everyone. I'll take over from where Harshita was. So in this session, we'll go through the Copilot Studio. We'll discuss what the technology is. We'll also talk about the industry use cases and followed by a demo. So we look forward for a participation. We will be doing a few polls in between to capture your feedback. And in the end, we will open the Q&A as well. So as Rakshita mentioned, please do send your questions to the chat windows. We are looking at it. And in the end, we'll go through the questions one by one and answer them. So over to you, Parvinder. Mohit, you can facilitate and let the Parvinder start the presentation.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen and I hope it's visible to everyone. Just give me a
Yes.
thumbs up if everyone. Okay, cool. So, like Vineet mentioned, we are going to have the webinar on Copilot Studio, and we'll look at some key features of Copilot Studio and how we can use it to build our very first Copilot. So, the agenda for today's presentation is going to be the following. We'll start with a brief introduction on AI Copilots. We'll go through what a Copilot is, how AI helps in advancing the Copilot's functionality, and we'll look at the Copilot Studio, how it's different from the pre-built Copilots that you get to use from Microsoft and other technology vendors. We'll go through some of the key components of Copilot and look at how AI helps in advancing the feature set and helps in building up copilots in few steps. And then finally, we'll look at how we can integrate Power Automate into all this and make our copilot do things on our data. And then finally, like Vineet mentioned, we'll have a demo at the end where we'll go through building a copilot from scratch, and we'll finally end with a Q&A session. Okay, so what's a copilot? So a copilot is basically a conversational interface where users can carry out different tasks, and it uses large language models to make decisions based on the user's input. And it helps users gather information from multiple domains in an enterprise environment. Some key features of a copilot include its ability to give context-aware assistance, where it can proactively respond to the user's query based on the past conversation that it has had with the user. It can also help in automating some tasks using Power Automate, where we can integrate the ability to run workflows and carry out repetitive tasks using automation, which in turn helps in boosting the productivity of the end user. It can also help in doing data analysis, where it can go through our data and provide us with analytics and actionable insights without having to do all the stuff manually. And it can also help in seamless communication, where it can unify information from different sources, bring it all on a single platform, and allow the users to quickly gather information which they might need. Now, if we look at the brief history of Copilot, for me, it all started with 𝐿𝐼. I don't know if you guys remember, but 𝐿𝐼 was a user assistant which used to come up in the Microsoft Office applications on the bottom right hand corner, and it used to help with some task. If I had to find out how to enable a particular setting in Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, it used to help with that. But the major advancement came around 2011, where we got our first voice-enabled user assistant with the launch of Siri by Apple, which was followed by Amazon and Microsoft launching their own voice-enabled user assistant called Alexa and Cortana. And then the next major breakthrough came around 2015 when OpenAI launched, and it launched the first model of GPT-1, which helped in integrating large language models into these user assistants. And then if we look at the current landscape and beyond, these co-pilots, they are expected to handle multimodal interactions. And by multimodal, I mean they can interact with text, they can interact with videos, they can interact with images. So if we look at the current landscape and beyond, we are expecting that these AI copilots will help enable the users using these multimodal interactions, and they'll play a very large role in optimizing the workflow in an organization and help the users make better decisions. Now, if we stick with Microsoft, they have a lot of pre-built copilots that you can use. So I've made a category for each of them. So if we start with copilots for life, these are the copilots which are already built into tools like Bing, Edge, and Windows 11. They help users carry out some regular tasks in their environment. Then we have Copilot for productivity, which is the Microsoft 365 Copilot, where you can integrate it with your Microsoft 365 environment, and it can help the users to get information from different sources like OneDrive, SharePoint, and you can help it summarize your Teams messages, your email history, and things like that. Then we have some industry specific co-pilots. So if we talk about data and analytics, there's a co-pilot built for that, which is integrated with Microsoft Fabric. Then we have a co-pilot for business application with Dynamics 365. There's even a co-pilot for security where you can integrate it with your Microsoft Purview, and it can help automate some security related tasks in your environment. Now, all these co-pilots, these come pre-built. They don't really allow you to do any customization on them. You can't get them to do specific tasks which they have not been built for. So this is where Copilot Studio comes into the picture. So Copilot Studio allows you to build custom copilots, basically AI chatbots, which are powered by topics. We'll have a look at what topics are later on in the slide. But these chatbots, they are powered by topics, which help them build a complex conversational flow with the end user. So they can do a back and forth with the end user, gather more knowledge about what the specific tasks they need to carry out. And all this is done through pre-built LLM models that are available. So Copilot Studio, by default, it uses the OpenAI models for its conversation, but you can integrate and bring in other models as well if you want to use them. But by default, it uses the OpenAI LLM models to build this conversational flow. And these co-pilots, they can query knowledge from a number of different sources. So they can query knowledge from publicly available information on websites, or you can limit them to only bring information from SharePoint, OneDrive. And on top of that, you can also manually upload documents, which it will use to answer the user's query. So you can give it some policy documents that are used in your organization. And when answering the user's question, it will limit itself to those documents. It will not give them random information, like is the case with pre-built models that you use. And you can also connect them with databases. And on top of this, you can get them to carry out some actions and automation. So you can integrate them with Power Automate to do some automation like running a workflow or sending somebody a notification through a mobile app. So these kinds of actions and automations can be built into these custom copilots. And once you have built a copilot, which you feel like is ready for use, you can publish them on a number of different sources. So you can publish your copilots on your public websites. You can publish them into mobile apps that you are developing, or you can also integrate them with Microsoft 365 and help the users carry out some automation inside your enterprise tenant. So if we talk about key components of a copilot, so the following are some of the key components. One is the knowledge sources. So knowledge sources where it will gather the information from to answer the user's question. Then we have topics. Topics are basically how the conversational flow will happen with the user. So topics define how a conversation will happen, what are the information that the copilot will gather from the user, and what is the answer it will provide at the end of the conversation. Channels basically are places where we can publish our copilot, and actions help us carry out some automation on top of these workflows. So if we talk about knowledge sources are basically information repositories that the copilot will use to generate the responses. These knowledge sources can vary from one organization to another, but you can use information from your Dynamics 365, so you can connect them with your Dataverse. You can bring in information from external sources like publicly available information on websites. You can connect them to your SharePoint and OneDrive for business environments. And the key takeaway from this is that knowledge sources make sure that the answer provided to the user is always correct and is most relevant to the organizational data that we have fed it. The thing with pre-built models that you can use, like you can use Chat GPT, you can go and use other LLM models. But when you ask them some information, they sometimes tend to give random information because they can query the entire web and look at sources which might not be correct. So there are cases when the information provided to the end user can be wrong at times. So with Copilot Studio, once you configure your knowledge sources, you make sure that the answers provided to the users are not random and they are in line with the data that we have fed the Copilot, and it's not just going to the internet and giving wrong information to the user. Now, if we look at some available knowledge sources, so these are some of the knowledge sources that we can connect it with. We can connect it to public websites. We can upload documents from our computer. We can connect it to SharePoint and OneDrive. Dataverse is also one connection. And apart from these, we can also connect it to third-party services. We can connect it to Salesforce to bring in our information from there. We can connect it to ServiceNow to help Copilot answer service desk questions, or we can also connect it to SQL databases in case we want to query information from there. So there are a lot of different knowledge sources that are available to the end user. Okay, now if we talk about topics, so topics are paths that a user can be taken on while they are interacting with the Copilot. So they basically define how the conversation will flow, what are the questions that the Copilot will ask, what are the information that the Copilot will gather, and how it will answer the queries. So they primarily consist of two elements. So there's a trigger phase, which basically triggers the Copilot. So an example as shown on screen is, so I created a topic which is for store hours, and it will basically answer questions related to the timings a store might be open. So a trigger phase can be what time do you open or when do you open. So there are different trigger phases which I can feed and tell the Copilot. Then if somebody asks any question related to these phrases, this is how you will answer. So once the trigger phase has been put in place, then we move on to the conversational nodes. So conversational nodes define how the Copilot will respond to a particular trigger phase. It can ask for more information from the user. So in case a user is asking what time does your store open, it can ask a follow-up question to the user and ask which location do you want to have this information for. So maybe our store locations are different. We might have a store in New Delhi, we might have a store in Mumbai, and Copilot can ask the user which store are you talking about. So conversational nodes basically define how the Copilot will respond. Does it need more information to be able to answer the question, or can it answer the question from the information that it already has? Or we can also have nodes where it will go ahead and run a particular Power Automate flow and run some workflow or send a user some notification. So in essence, whenever you are creating a topic, you need to define both the trigger phase, which will trigger the topic, and you also need to define how the conversation will flow. Then we have channels. So channels are various platforms or interfaces where the Copilot can be deployed and where the users can interact with the Copilot and ask queries and get answers. So they help in giving the user an interface where you can ask the questions and get the answer. Some of the channels where a Copilot can be deployed is you can deploy it directly in Microsoft Teams. So without leaving the Teams application, the user can ask the Copilot some questions and get the answers. Or you can also deploy them on public websites. So they can act as a front end for your sales team where anybody can go access your website and ask the Copilot questions about your services or different things that you do. So you can publish them on public websites. You can also integrate them with Power Apps. So if you have developed a custom application to be used internally, you can integrate them with Power Apps where the users can start using the Copilot. You can also integrate them with Dynamics 365. In Dynamics 365, you can help the users ask questions and carry out automations. Or if you are developing a mobile application, you can also do custom integrations where you can integrate these AI chatbots directly into the mobile application that you are developing. Okay, now if we talk about actions, actions are actions basically refer to specific operations that the Copilot can perform on behalf of the user. Now, this capability of the Copilot to perform actions, they make Copilot more than just a source of information because now they are an active participant in the conversation and they can complete tasks which can help enhance the user's productivity. Actions can include automated workflows where Copilot can trigger already created Power Automate flows. They can start an approval process or they can send a notification to the user's device. We can also use Copilots to do CRUD operations on our data sources. So in case we have connected it with our databases, we can ask it to fetch some information from the database or update a particular information there. And we can also ask it to delete and update. Or we can also integrate it with external systems using custom APIs where we can add on top of already existing workflows. In case we have an application which might not support Power Automate, there we can use custom APIs to integrate Copilot and it can then go ahead and invoke some steps in your application, which can enhance the functionality of the Copilot beyond what is already available out of the box. Okay, now if we talk about integration with Power Automate, so we have Power Automate, which is already available in, if you're already using Microsoft 365, you can already use Power Automate to automate some workflows in your organization. And how Copilot helps is it adds depth to your interactions that the user is having with the Copilot. So actions basically refer to specific operations that the Copilot can initiate or it can perform on behalf of the user. And we have the following options. If we just talk about Power Automate, we can initiate it with already existing workflows where it can get the context from the user's input, fetch the required information and feed it to Power Automate and carry out some steps. So here we have a example where we are initiating a approval request which is being sent after some delay. So here Power Automate once it gets all the information from Copilot, it can then feed the information to itself and start running the workflow. Or the next example we have is we can also use Power Automate to transfer the conversation to a live agent. So in case user has asked a particular question which the Copilot is not able to respond to, it can transfer the conversation to a live agent using Dynamics 365. So if you are using Dynamics 365, there's something that you can use where the Copilot will transfer the information to a live agent, and then the live agent can take over and give answers to the user's queries. And Copilot, when it is transferring the conversation, it will transfer all the relevant information from its previous communication over to the live agent. So they have full context of what the conversation was and where do they need to pitch in. Okay, now if we look at some AI capabilities of Copilot, and we'll see how it is helping in creating Copilots quickly. So earlier, Microsoft Copilot was called Power Virtual Agent. So they have recently renamed it to Copilot. You could build conversational bots previously as well, but how AI is changing things is earlier when you used to create a virtual agent, you had to manually author all the different topics. So you had to anticipate what are the different combinations of word that the user might phrase their question in. And you have to take into account all the different permutations and combinations, and then tell the Copilot what to do. Now, this would lead to a lot of time being spent while you are manually creating all these topics. And it also resulted in a lot of missed opportunities because there might be some phrases which you as a creator didn't take into account while creating the virtual agent. And in those cases, in such scenarios, the virtual agent was not able to answer the user's question. And there were a lot of missed conversations, which led to a lot of escalations. Now, with the advent of generative AI, with the advent of LLMs, what happens is while creating copilots, do not need to spend a lot of time manually authoring any topic. So you can spend time on creating topics which are business critical and let the generative AI part of Copilot Studio take care of the rest of the topics. So now you don't need to spend a lot of times to create these topics. And also, in case there are some phrases which you didn't anticipate, the Copilot can figure out those scenarios, and if the users asks any particular question, it can then use its already available knowledge sources. So if we have connected it to SharePoint, it can use all the documents stored on SharePoint to figure out what the user is trying to ask and if there is any relevant information available in any of these documents, and then try to answer the user questions. So now you don't need to spend a lot of time while creating the topics, and also you can be rest assured that any topics that you miss or any phrases that you miss, Copilot can take care of them. Now, if we look at some use cases, so I have put in some industry specific use cases here. So if we talk about the healthcare industry, we can use it to book appointments for our users. So we can publish copilots which can be accessed via our public website, and the users can directly interact with that copilot to book their appointment requests, or the the healthcare individual, they can also book it to use it to summarize patient appointments. So as an individual, if you have n number of appointment coming up, you can ask the copilot to summarize, gather any relevant information to your appointments and give you the details. You can also use it to look up previous user information before prescribing any new medication. So you can connect it with your databases where you are storing the PI information for all your users, and you can ask Copilot to look up a relevant user and find out all the information, and then use that summary to prescribe new information. Or you can also, connect it to your database and look up the details of any previous trials. You can compare your current studies with the previous trials and find any information that you might need. If we talk about travel industry, we can use it as a customer booking assistant where co-pilots can connect as agents to the end user, and they can help find users relevant information about flight details or hotels or packages based on their previous preferences. They can also be used for in-destination support. So resorts and hotels, they can integrate Copilot with their knowledge sources, and then their end users can use them for services like room service orders or booking a spa appointment or gathering information about local tour details. We can also use it to create personalized itinerary for users, which can, create customized itineraries for each customer based on their interest, based on their preferred destination, and all these details it can pick up from their previous travel history as well. So if you are storing travel history details for your users, you can look up previous information to propose new itinerary to the end users. In manufacturing, you can use it to, review your contract details. So if you are storing your contracts on a central location, like in a database or on SharePoint, you can connect it, you can connect the Copilot with these data sources, and it can review the contract details and provide you with information. And you can also use it to revise any terms in case you want to update the contract details for a particular user, rather than going and having to edit the document manually. You can tell the copilot that these are the things I need to update in a particular contract, and it can go ahead and do it for you. You can also use it to summarize any pending contracts. So you can look up critical deadlines for any contracts that are coming up by connecting it with your data source and fetching the information. So if we talk about pricing, the Copilot Studio consists of two parts. Uh, The first one is the Copilot Studio licensing, which will cost you anywhere around $200. So this Copilot Studio license is requirement per tenant. So you can create n number of copilots in your tenant using one single license, and these agents or these copilots, they can be published across different channels. and they can answer the user's query. The only limit on this is that it can only answer 25,000 messages every month. So in case your number of messages goes over 25,000, you need to buy additional licenses. But till 25,000, you can create any number of copilots in the organization, and the users or your external participants can start using them. Then we have the next license, which is Microsoft 365 Copilot license, which is around $30 per user per month. Now, this license is needed only by the administrators who are going to create the Copilot. So in my organization, if I am the one who is responsible for creating these Copilots, I need to have one Microsoft 365 Copilot license assigned to me. And then all the rest of the users who are going to use the Copilot to gather information, they will be satisfied with the first license, which is the Copilot Studio tenant license. So these are the two licenses that you need to be aware of if you are looking into it. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through the demo. So just allow me a moment.
In the meanwhile, Rakshita, if you're back, you want to push a poll to the audience?
Yeah. So for Purvinder, can you post polls?
Maybe
Yeah,
one
yeah.
or two now, while then we can go into demo.
Sure. So before I start sharing the demo, I'm going to post one poll. Which aspect of Copilot Studio interests you the most? So you'll have four options and you can select multiple choice in there.
While you do that, so thank you so much everyone for listening, and we'll continue the webinar. So I just wanted to add that I think it is a game-changing technology. So what in my view is, we know that AI is there. We all have to use the AI, but the problem we see is it's complex and it's very costly to use. But with this technology, you can start leveraging AI into your systems. So the difference which you need to understand is the Copilot, which is given by Microsoft, and the Copilot Studio, which we are talking about today, is it allows you to customize how copilots behave. It allows you to define actions. So this you can create AI assistants. They can act as an autonomous agents to do various things for you. So I think it is a very powerful technology, and we should all evaluate it. And it can, also you can create individual agents. You don't have to integrate with Microsoft Copilot. You can create different agent post on the different channels as Parvinder mentioned. So one of the use case I talk about was with integration with SAP. So there is a manufacturing company. They have an SAP huge environment. So there are a lot of information which is stored in SAP. Now we need an interface. So rather than everybody opening the SAP console, there can be a chatbot published to the internal teams where the internal employees can ask questions about various things. Let's say there is a salesperson who wants to know the inventory when he's visiting a customer site. He can easily find it. We can publish a Copilot agent on our website, which can help our partners, vendors with the required information, maybe regarding their invoices or contracts. So I think it's a very powerful technology. We need to just identify which use case we want to address based on our industry. So for travel, itinerary creation, customer support, there are many things I think we can do. Yeah, Parvinder, you can carry.
Yeah, I think I'm going to post one more poll uh, just to get an idea of how our user base is like today. So the poll is, which Microsoft product are you using already in your business? So if you are using any of these products, you can share the details. All right. So I'll share my screen. Yeah. So I had recorded a demo earlier today in the morning, and I'm going to share my screen and I'll play the recording quickly. So just give me a second. Okay, so now in order to create your first Copilot, what you need to do is
Sorry,
you
just can
need
you
to go
pause,
to,
Parinder? Can you put Parinder on spotlight?
so you need to go to Copilot.
Can we have Parinder's screen on spotlight? Is it already there?
Yeah, I think it's already there.
It's already there.
Okay, please carry on.
Okay, so now in order to create your first Copilot, what you need to do is you need to go to, so you need to go to copilotstudio.microsoft.com, and it will log you in to the portal from where you can create and manage Copilots. So by default, when you log in for the first time, this is the page that you will see. You will see all your recent Copilots that you have created pop up here. And then if you scroll down, you have some templates which are pre-built by Microsoft, and you can start using them by just setting them up quickly. So we have two options when it comes to creating the Copilot. The first option is we can create the Copilot using this describe your agent to create it feature. What it does is it walks us through some of the steps. It will ask you some questions like what you want your Copilot to be able to do, what is the tone of the answers that it should give to the users, and you can also give it knowledge sources. So from where should the Copilot query the knowledge? Or you can also go ahead and start creating your Copilots right from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the second option. I'm going to click on create in the left-hand menu, and it will walk me through the same steps basically. Okay. In here, I'll say I want to create a new agent. So agent is just the new name for Copilots. Earlier, it used to be called just Copilots, but now they have changed the name to agent. You'll click on agent and it will ask you some questions. So the first question it asks you is, how will your Copilot assist your user? So what do you want this Copilot to be able to do? And in here, for today's demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Copilot which will help my users with learning about Power Platform. All right. So this will be a learning Copilot which will help users with their questions about any of the services in Power Platform. They'll be able to ask it questions about Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI, and it will be able to answer those questions for the users. Right. So I just pasted this. So I'm saying that the Copilot will be here to help the users to learn Power Platform by guiding them through each step with personalized assistance. And the users can ask questions about Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. I'll send it, and it will take a few seconds, and then it will ask the next question, which will be, what do you want the tone of your Copilot to be? So it's asking, do you have any instructions on how your Copilot should assist, for example, a specific tone? And since this is a learning Copilot, I'm going to say that the Copilot should use a friendly and approachable tone. It should be supportive and accessible to users of all experience levels. So this is what I'm saying in my message, and I'll send it. And then it will take a couple of seconds more, and it will ask me about the knowledge sources, from where should it answer the user's question, right? So it's saying, where should your Copilot find important information? Provide any publicly accessible websites that your Copilot will need. So when you're creating the Copilot, when you're going through this step, you can only give public websites. later on, we'll see how we can connect it to our SharePoint libraries or to our databases. But when you're creating the Copilot from scratch, you can only give public websites. So I'll say that it should use the Microsoft Learn website to provide users with the relevant information. And it will take some seconds to get loaded. All right. And then finally, it asks me a question that are there any topics or tasks this Copilot shouldn't help with or talk about? And what I'm going to say is that it should not talk about any security related issues. It should always tell the user to not do any changes to the live production environment, always use a sandbox environment, and so on. So I'm saying that steer clear of sensitive security configuration, avoid suggesting changes directly to the live and production environment, and the Copilot should stay focused on Power Platform, and it should not answer any questions about any other Microsoft service or non-Microsoft tool. I think this is the last question, and after this, you can just click on create, and it will start creating the Copilot and give you the take you to the page from where you can manage other things. So cool. So yeah, here you can see perfect. You are all set to test out your new Copilot. So finally, once you have answered all these questions, you can click on create, and it takes a couple of seconds. It's very quick, not too long. Earlier, it used to take around a minute, but now it, it it's up and ready within seconds. So here you can see my agent is ready. Here's all the description about what this agent will do. Here are the instructions for the Copilot on how it should answer the user queries. And then we have the knowledge base from where it will answer the question. And right from here, I can test out my Copilot. So here you can see on the right-hand side, I have the test your agent pane from where I can see whether or not the Copilot is working correctly. So by default, whenever a new conversation will launch, it just tells the user that I am a Power Platform Learning Assistant. So this is where it will tell its name to the end user, and it will also tell them that, okay, I sometimes use AI to answer your questions. All right. So let me first ask it a question like, what can you help me with? Let's see. So it's saying that I can help you learn, navigate Microsoft Power Platform with Power Apps, Power BI, and Power Automate. And additionally, I can explain concepts like Power Effects. So if you remember, when I was creating the Copilot, I never mentioned anything about Power Effects. All I mentioned was Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. But still, it mentioned additional details which are used inside Power Platform, like Power Effects. So where this knowledge is coming from is generative AI. Since this tool has been trained on a large set of documents, including Microsoft's own documentation, it knows that Power Effects is something which is related to Power Platform. And if the user is asking anything about Power Platform, it can also check whether the user is asking about Power Effects, go through the documentation of Microsoft, and then answer the user's question. And then I can ask it more questions about different tools. So let's say I ask it what are custom connectors in Power Platform and Power Apps. Right, so it tells me custom connectors are wrappers around APIs that enable logic as Power Automate, communicate with REST, and so on. So it's giving me information, but it is also giving me the references from where it is picking this information. So if I click on these references, it will take me to the Microsoft documentation, and you can see that this is the same URL which I gave to the Copilot as a knowledge source when I was creating it. So it will always answer using the knowledge sources that you provide it with. Right? It will always give you references to different sections from where it is picking up the information from inside your knowledge base. So this was one where we are using a public website. So if I go back to knowledge base, you can see I'm using a public website to answer the questions. Now, what if I don't want to connect to a public website, but rather I wanted to pick up information from my SharePoint libraries or from my OneDrive for Business. So I have another Copilot already created. And if I go to, let's say, this internal HR bot. So I've created this Copilot so that it can answer the user's questions about internal HR policies, right? So here, if you can see, this is the message that the user will get. I am an internal HR bot. I'm here to answer all your questions about vacations or other leave policies, right? So it is telling the user that what information it can help the user with. And if I go back to my knowledge sources, here you can see I've connected it with a SharePoint site called Custom Copilot Studio Demo, from where it will pick up all the information and answer the user questions. Now, here, if I ask it how many leaves do I get, it will go search the SharePoint library, find any relevant documentation, and fetch the information for me. Yeah, so here you can see that full-time employees are entitled to 20 working days of vacation and 10 additional sick days per year. And it's also giving me the references. So this is the name of the documentation stored on my SharePoint from where it is picking up the information. So as you can see, we have limited the knowledge sources from where it's picking up the information to our SharePoint site. Now, so we have created a Copilot. We have given it knowledge sources where we are saying that it can either connect to public websites or it can gather the information from SharePoint sites. But what if I don't want it to just share information with the user? What if I wanted to do some automation as well? And in here, I'll stick with the internal HR bot for this demo, and I'll quickly show you how the end user can use Copilot to book a leave without having to fill any kind of form or go to any Power App and fill all the details there. So I'll put in a request here. I'll say that, can you help me book a vacation? And it's asking me, it's clarifying what do I want it to do? And I'll say I want help with vacation booking. Okay, great. It's saying, I'm glad you are taking a vacation. Please provide me with the details. Now in here, I will quickly provide it details. I'll say I am on leave from 20th till 22nd November. Paste it here. I'll say I am on leave from 20th to 22nd. I'll be visiting my hometown, but I'll have my mobile with me for emergencies. Okay, so as you can see, I provided you with the information and it's saying that your vacation has been booked into the system. Please await approval. Now, what is happening on the backend is it is running an action when I'm providing it with the information. So I'm running a Power Automate flow, which will take the entire user's context, the context of the entire message, and it will try to find out what is the start date of the vacation, what is the end date, and identify any additional information that I've provided it with. So if I go to topics, if I go to action, and in here we see that I have a action which is connected to this Copilot, which is running a flow. And if I click on it and quickly just go to the flow and see the previous run information. So here we have a flow which ran 1 minute ago. And if I go in here, you will see that it ran from it was triggered from Copilot, and this is the information it extracted from my message. So it extracted the user's email address, it extracted the start date, end date, and identified any additional information that I provided it with. And then what it's doing is it is going ahead and creating an item in the SharePoint list and then sending a approval request to my manager who can then go ahead and approve the request for me. Right? If I quickly just pull up the message where I got the leave request, you can also see the email that I sent to my manager. Yeah. So here you see requested by, and it's showing email at the user who requested the leave, and it is providing with all the additional details to the manager so that he can go ahead and approve or reject the request. So this is how you can put your Copilot to allow to do some automation on your data sources. So for this demo, I've kept it simple. I've just asked it to go ahead and create an item in the SharePoint list and send a approval request to my manager. But you can connect it to your databases, your Dataverse, and make it do complex stuff as well.
Okay, thanks, Parvinder.
Yeah.
While you come back, Rakshita, do we have any other poll?
No, so we have got insights how customers are using the ChatGPT, their overview. So, like we have covered all the topics on ChatGPT and sorry, AI Copilot Studio. So now the chat is open. You can ask questions, and Purvinder and Vidit sir will answer your queries and question. Later on, I will share my email ID so you can like mail me your questions query, and individually also I'll connect with you.
Yeah, thanks, Rakshita. Thank you, everyone, for taking out time and joining it. So we look forward to the questions, and please feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask a question on the call. We will be happy to unmute you, and we'll be able to take the question. Okay, so I see a question from Mr. Partha. Just curious to know, do you think Otter.ai offers better transcription for Teams meeting compared to Copilot? And is that why you are using Otter.ai for not taking in this meeting? Okay, thank you, Partha, for the question. I don't think we are using Otter.ai. Maybe it is some attendee who has admitted it. But yeah, so there are many tools available, different AI tools available. They all bring some value. The topic which we are covering today is Copilot Studio. So it is more than just a transcription tool or just a conversational AI tool. It actually, one, obviously, it is a low code platform and you can customize, you can control the conversation, you can control the actions which you want it to take. And also you can connect it with various different systems you have, maybe your ERP systems, and automate the actions. Obviously, it integrates very well with the Microsoft ecosystem. That's another benefit. But yeah, so it is a little different than Otter.ai. But again, there are many tools nowadays. Everybody is working on AI. Do we have any other question? No problem. Thank you, Partha.
Any questions?
Okay, very good question. How can we connect Copilot in MS Fabric? Okay, so we do have a Fabric team which works on the Fabric expertise, and we are going to have a webinar on Fabric, next webinar on Fabric in the month of January. But can anybody answer that question, Parvinder, you or
Yeah.
anybody from our team?
So yeah, I'll take that question. So for Fabric, Microsoft is coming out with their own connector. So currently it can't connect with Fabric. But you can connect it with Power BI. But if you want to connect it with Fabric, they are coming out with a connector which you can use out of the box. So it will be very easier.
Thanks, Parvinder.
Okay, so for connecting it with SQL, if the SQL server is hosted on Azure, they already have a connector built which we can use to connect it. But apart from that, if it's on-prem, we do need to open certain APIs and give it permission so that it can perform CRUD operations on the databases.
Our next part is it acceptable by IT, VAPT auditors? So, I mean, that's one, Mukesh, that's one thing which actually probably will make it more acceptable because it is controlled. So you can control where the information will go from. And also it supports all the security features which are offered by Microsoft. So you can have DLP policies to it. So rather than, probably with ChatGPT, you will go and send out the information to the external world. You can control. So I think if you have the proper control, logging, DLPs, and other security, I hope security teams will be more than happy to give us a sign off.
Yeah, and on the security part, I have an input. So I showed you an example where I was gathering information from SharePoint, right? So what happens is when we are connecting it to these knowledge sources like SharePoint or SQL Server, they will only fetch the information which the user is allowed to fetch. So if I, as a user, am asking a question, let's say I'm asking about the salary details of a particular employee in my organization. So I'm not from the finance team or I'm not from the upper management, and I would not have information about, right? Generally, if I go to SharePoint, I would not be able to access the site where this kind of information is stored. So even when I am asking the Copilot the same question, Copilot will also only respond to those queries to which I as a user have access to. If I don't have access to that SharePoint site, it will not answer the question that I'm asking it. So it will only give user relevant information by default. And same goes for SQL servers and other data sources that we connected to. If the end user doesn't have permission to access that information, Copilot will not respond with it.
So it honors role-based access
Yeah.
control and authorizations.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll wait for any more questions. And we did see a quick demo of HR. Another demo, I think last time which we did was around automating the support tasks. So we created a demo where we were able to automatically create users in the identity systems, be it Active Directory, Microsoft 365, creating mailboxes. So those are a few more examples. But as we said, discussing the use cases, there are many other things which can be done industry-wise.